minds.
Like, everyone should just take psychedelics. But let's take a moment to just say, Gwe, hello, hi, and welcome to the Glorious Mess, episode numero numero 8. Numero Spanish, fuck. Numer? Do you know French, Amanda?
No, you
Okay,
know this.
anyways, welcome to episode number 8, season 1, season finale of the Glorious Mess, and recognizing like the Glorious Mess is like probably like the dictionary in Webster's of like Raymond Jordan Johnson Brown. It's like glorious mess, adjective, verb, conjugal violence.
True. You
What?
have been a glorious mess literally since the day I laid eyes on you.
And the thing is, like, we'll go through we'll explore. We'll take a little journey together, maybe in our conversation today. And I want everyone to know, like, this episode is so unplanned that we just pressed record at the top of this conversation after the immense amount of technical difficulty.
As if I don't work with computers every day of my damn life. You think that just pushing a button would work? No.
And this is virtual, so it's like we've been living in a fucking pandemic virtual world for what, like it's like 4 years, right? Like,
That's so true. This is technically supposed to be the norm.
this is the norm, and like we can't figure out the norm. And then, did you see the recent news? Apple's like Vision Pro thing.
Oh, right.
It's trippy. So basically, you've got the goggles. Like Meta has these goggles,
This
and
is their like crazy, insane, expensive VR headset thing, right? Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
where theirs keeps you like when you're looking at the world, it adds like a screen to your reality, but you can still see what's happening in the world, which I kind of appreciated. That like it's kind of making it like immersive, like you're still a part of the world. And as you know, I'm terrified of flying, and so what it does is how it captures. So it shows a scene of this woman on a flight, anxious, and then she like puts it on, and she's able to like her surroundings. She can see like a relaxing beach, and then she's watching a movie. So like, because our brains really are kind of basic and reptilian, I probably can overcome my flight fear and not have to take clonazepam when I fly if I these pros. And even if they don't help, I'm going to tell that to myself to justify that $3,500 purchase.
I just feel like this world is turning so like robotic. Like it's just another thing that's going to be another, accessory that is so popular that it becomes a sweeping trend and a new way of life, and it's just going to be like, well, what about just being humans?
Mm.
What about, just being able to like have a world that isn't so unbelievably tainted and malicious and aggressive that our brains need to be tricked into relaxation? Like, what if we just have the control over our minds because we're in a nurturing, healthy, work environment?
Yeah, well, like, okay, so I was reading this, like, there was a study about, because I always say, like, alcohol and, like, substances are the most accessible, affordable coping mechanism possible. Like, therapy is so out of reach and unattainable. And yeah, arguably, like, therapy is not always good. Like, I think we've both been through a couple therapists. Like, it's like
Totally.
some are good, some are not good, or like not for us. That's
Mo-
okay.
most are not good.
It was because they're taught like it's like that binary thinking of like they're taught, okay, someone comes in with this concern, we're going to explore using this model, which worked for like these 10 white people who all come from middle class homes that we once childhood on, like, and that's not a critique of all. I'm sure there's a more culturally relevant model, but it's the more we realize these careers were built to like try to fit in boxes, the more like we need to just actually like learn how to be better humans, like you said, like just be there for your friends. Like people can't sit with somebody going through an issue and just like talk about it. We have to jump to problem solving mode because we're so inequipped to like handle our own emotions that your friend listening to them triggers your own response. So you have to jump to problem solving mode because you're like, for me, my mirror neurons are like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm feeling this, and I need you to not feel this, so I'm just gonna give you problem solving. When really, it's like, I just wanted you to listen, Sally. Well, I drink my fucking wine.
Like I'm not asking for too much.
I'm not asking for too much. Like just and so it's like
Um,
back to humanity.
totally. It honestly that made me think about my massage therapist.
Oh.
Shout out to Justin Holman. If you're in Calgary, he just started his own private practice, I was going to say.
Mm,
He's phenomenal in the sense that just like he doesn't treat the body in the same way that, massage therapists that I've seen in the past have, like where it's just, I do this to one side of the body. And then once I'm done with this side of the body, I go on this side and I focus on a few more spots that are like, if it feels tense or there's like a knot there, I'll pay attention and like dig a little bit deeper on that side. But, essentially it's a pretty uniform kind of procedure that you go through. You watch the clock, 60 minutes, you're done, drink water, see you when I see you, bye.
yeah.
Justin inquires about, what I do for a living.
Hmm.
He considers the position that I sit in all day. This is my mouse hand. Sometimes my posture is terrible. I'm leaning forward. Sometimes it's awful. And like this shoulder is obviously going to have a lot more going on than this shoulder. And he treats my body as it's my body. Like I'm not getting the same service or, product from him that the person before me or after me gets. I'm having
Mm,
a very specific therapeutic treatment that's catered to my body and what I need,
mm,
which is something that just makes me feel like I want to shout it to him at the top of the lungs, but I mean, at the top of my lungs. But just going back to like therapy, where it's like so many situations have been like, what's difficult for you today, or what's weighing you down, and it's just the same kind of like therapeutic and like theoretic response
yeah.
that should give you relief, but it's like that's just a blanket statement on the human being trying to cope versus like what I need specifically. Like my treatment needs to be catered to me
Hmm.
specifically.
And
I don't know how we got here from VR goggles.
no, but think about like, listen, don't ask questions. Just follow the path. Has colonialism taught you nothing? You don't question.
It's true.
But it's like when you think of this idea of 60 minutes and this whole idea, I was listening to a brilliant speaker, advocate, Larissa. She's an Afro-Indigenous woman. She lives in Calgary actually, and um, she talked about this relationship to time and like from like our ancestors we wouldn't see that, but there's like this capitalist drive towards time that like likes to structure time in a way that makes you able to be controlled, that makes you profitable, and arguably makes you a product. So like our whole world is built around this concept of time. But like, listen, I'm looking at this tree outside, like they don't perceive time in the same way that we do. The animals out in the fucking thing, they're like, oh, bitch, the sun is up, time to eat, let's
Like
go.
it's
Like,
a little bit darker. You know what I feel? I feel like I could eat. Could you eat?
you hungry? Let's go. Like, it's a
We
whole
hungry.
it's a whole different conversation. I'm just like, how what's that song by Deborah Cox? Like, how did you get here?
Stop.
How did we get here? Because I'm just like, wait a minute, we're human beings and we're like so brilliant and like expansive and capable of so much, and we've done so much, but then in the same way, I'm like, wow, we really fucked this life up, like this system up.
Truly, to the
Like,
point where I honestly feel like this is the hippie in me, but like I honestly feel like grade school is nothing but a preparation for us to just get in line and system. Like I
yeah,
don't know how much it actually prepares us for the real emotional battle that we go through. It
yeah.
simply prepares us for that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And the fact that like time, this concept of time,
Hmm.
it just made that I just had a light bulb moment based off of what you said where it's like I can't wrap my mind around how much time has gone by recently because of how time conscious I am.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's like the idea of business hours, then that chunk of time, and
Yeah.
like how Monday to Friday goes in a flash, and then, Friday at 4 o'clock up until like 7 on Sunday.
Hmm.
Like that amount of time just isn't enough. So it seems short but we're not really nearly as focused on like a schedule or routine or like falling in line so and so with,
Mhm.
the system, because those are outside of business hours.
Yeah. And do you think like, because there's times where I've like meditated and I've been like, it depends how active my mind is, but I'm like, oh wow, it's been like only 5 minutes and it felt like a long time. Like I will say I have felt, or like if you've used psychedelics, like there are times where you've become present of time, aware of time. But do you remember Sonic the Hedgehog, the game?
I do.
Or like Crash Bandicoot? Like it's almost like life more often. You know how he hits the checkpoints? It's like that's what life, this structure of time that we live in is like, it's these checkpoints. Like everyone talks about like the Sunday scaries going into the week. Like it's this collective shared time trauma.
It's so true. This is actually blowing my mind a little bit.
Right. And we didn't even do
Time is such a
psychedelics.
weird construct.
It's a weird question. And it like, as someone who suffers and experiences anxiety, and sorry, I changed it to suffer because I'm like, that victimizes me and isn't feel empowering. I experience anxiety and sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. But the idea of time, like when I get on a flight, again, we'll go back to this of like, I create I create safety nets around the amount of time. So like if I fly to Calgary, I am like, well, if I go through Winnipeg, I can handle this for 2.5 hours and go to Winnipeg. Then I can
Mm.
do another 2.5 hours. But reality, then sometimes I can't get that flight and I fly 5 hours and it's not an issue. If anything, it's better because when I leave, I go to X and I know I'm gonna land at Y.
Mm.
Um, it's almost better. But if I built safety nets and like in this last year with all the anxiety I think I've felt and the continued excitement of my nervous system, arguably like the reconnection to my body, I have started to build when I feel a sense of panic time into safety, like okay, well this will pass in 5 to 10 minutes, but like time is much more from a cultural context, like it's more fluid than that. It's more natural. It's this constant movement of balance, and it's not limited. Like, but everything we're taught in school is like is that, and I think that's what makes it so sad in the sense of like now in our 20s we're now the like we're unpacking all of this, and so now our life could have been this like expansive rich experience, but because of where we're at, I feel like all we've spent in our 20s and 30s is like healing from the shit that we were conditioned into for years, where we had no control over going to school or not. It was not a choice. It was
No,
you were in a black household.
I did not
Laverne,
have choice.
Laverne would come into my room and pour water upon me and say, "You will get up and go to school, young man." Like there's no choice. You are going to school unless you are dying, dying.
I just like, if I could currently see a world that would benefit from that,
Hmm.
I feel like I would enforce it. I would have a child and I'd be like, yeah, get your ass up. It's time for school.
Gonna wake up.
But honestly, like, what's the point?
For what?
That's It's not a catalyst to success.
No.
It's not a catalyst to like, being a decent human being.
Oh,
So what is the urgency for it?
yeah.
Like,
That's
just give us a choice, man. Just give us a choice. We just want choices.
and that's the thing, like and again back to like what I was saying at the beginning of like, my coworker shared a really good thought, like, RJ, these ideas are great, but as an organization, we're not quite ready because of the systemic pieces that aren't there yet. And so like, I think that's my like, I think you told me this word and it stuck with me. I'd heard it before, but when you said it resonated of like existential dread. The
Is it
and
because is it because of the way I speak sweetly?
yes, soft, sweet whispers.
Low, my low tones.
But this existential dread, like we're so I mean, look at political numbers for like people voting, like it's like 50% maybe. Like we're so disengaged from the systems that inform our day to day, but then also don't inform our day to day. Like we feel like we wake up in the morning and we're like, we can live blindly to what's happening, but then in reality, we like woke up, purchased these overpriced foods, and then got into our car that we had to get a license to pay for, and then have to pay for insurance because that's the law. And then we follow the speed limit to get to the workplace, and then we pay the parking because we don't want the ticket. And we participate in this work. Like, it's like you can live blindly to it, but it's like when you, I think the pandemic really taught us, like, oh my God, why the hell are we doing all this work? Like,
No.
and to connect it back to what you
Like,
were saying about AI is like, or sorry, AI and like technology is like, my case for AI, and this is coming from someone who doesn't and hasn't spent enough time with it to fully understand, but I kind of like the idea of this.
same for me.
It's like this person who, this AI that has no ability to be biased to human experiences. It is what it is, and things are black and white. So is there black and white processes in our lives that humans do right now that we could alleviate from them doing, so that then we could go back to being a human in other
Right.
ways, and be just like creating art and like working 10 hours a week but still having enough income? Will like AI control, like, is there a, maybe that's my optimism, but I'm like, is there a reality where that exists?
Oh no.
Great show with a message, but like, but that was one of many phrases. But like, I want to go back, like, let's take a second and like really reflect. Like, if you look at us, there's this word era. Everyone is talking about like, oh, I'm in this era. I'm
Totally.
in this era. Like, I feel like why it's so perfect that you're at the finale of this season 1 of this glorious message. Like, we have known and seen each other through countless eras.
True.
And to take folks back, like Amanda and I met in like Black Pentecostal church. My foster dad and her dad were best friends, and we almost dated. We sang on the youth choir. I could not, still cannot sing. And you
I was
and
always honest with you about that. I don't know why you considered to pursue it.
I think one time when we were singing, so on youth Sundays, once a month, was that once a month or once every 3 months? I can't remember.
I think it was once a month.
Once a month. So the youth choir, or like me, Amanda, Nicole, like people, anyway, people listening are like, who? Anyway, us, we would sing and we would like lead out the songs and stuff. And yeah, I feel like one time we sat down and you were like, that was really bad. Like, I think, yeah, on the podium. So like, but you were right. You were truthful. And the Bible says, do not lie.
So sorry. Like, it had to be done,
Mhm.
especially in like a church setting. Church people stay thinking that they can sing and be like, I just want to sing this quick song. And you're like, I wish you wouldn't.
I wish you wouldn't.
I wish you wouldn't.
And there is a thing too, if you've ever been, anyone listening or watching on YouTube, of like Black church, where it's like, if a certain song starts and they're like, one more time, it will not be one more time.
It will not, you know.
It will keep going
Keeps
again.
going. Then all of a sudden, the preacher decides not to come on and turns it into a prayer meeting. Next thing you know, the song is going on loop for 3 hours, and you're like, I just want to know when I can get a snack.
I just want to eat. Well, and so this is
I'm
the thing
just
too, is like,
hungry.
because when I switched gears into, again, more backstory for anyone who doesn't know me, is I was dating a girl and was in Bible school. Amanda and I went to Bible school together.
It's true. He actually convinced me to go with him because that was around the time that we almost dated. So I was like, I'm gonna go follow this boy to church school.
Oh my. So I just disregard the laundry machine that just buzzed. But yeah, oh my God. Yeah, it was, and it was a dream. I mean, we'd wake up in the morning, we would like ride share. We'd do like the most stupidest shit
Just
ever.
silly, silly.
Just so stupid, so silly, like, but so iconic. And like, anyway, church was such an interesting church was such an interesting journey. Interesting, but I mean, when I was doing that, I was doing a bachelor's in theology, youth ministry, and then you were
Mm-hmm.
doing your behavioral science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now, again, so back to this era as of like where we were to now, like I don't work in definitely not in theology.
And
Definitely
I don't work with children in psychology at all. I work in the law, which is just as terrible.
right? A whole new system. But like
It's so
in a
true.
lot of ways, when I look to like, it's interesting, like parts of me when I reflect, I'm like, oh, things were simpler then, whereas things are not so simple now. But in like the same balance perspective of like, there are these beautiful, like we were sold on an idea of like joy and happiness, like, and that was the goal, that was the thing. And this was the plan, you finish Bible school, you get married, you have the kids, this is the life. And just FYI, this will go on Facebook, but like all of those church people who had like 5 kids look so tired and sickly at the edge. But where we're at now is like it's messy, but there are these beautiful moments of like joy and empowerment. And I don't know, that's kind of great now. But thank you. Welcome back from the technical difficulties. I was talking about like eras and kind of the idea, maybe the like traditional Christian perspective. We were like, holy shit.
Cake went down the wrong pipe. That
Right.
rainbow cake will get you every time.
It's finally thawed though, I will say, so it's a lot better
That's
now.
true.
But the idea that like when you grow up in the church, there's a way of how life is supposed to be. There is
Mhm.
you go to your Bible school, you find your partner, you have the kids, and then I was critiquing some of like those people that we know who where they are now, at least from social media, which I know is not like the full like perspective, but like they
Totally.
all look fucking tired and depressed. Like, and maybe that's judgmental. I have a projection, sure, I'll admit that. But like at the same time, I'm like, I'm so happy that we both did not choose that taught lifestyle because it brought us to where we are now. And even though that's still messy and complex, it's like still beautiful.
Totally. This is great. Experience is something that I'm just so obsessed with, and I feel like it's such an important perspective to have, where it's like I don't typically feel much regret, just
Mhm,
because I feel like what I went through, what I experienced was necessary for where I am right now.
mhm,
So even like growing up in the church as a younger person, it was really fun because and I met a lot of people. I have a lot of young friends that I still talk to this day and age. Um, but at the same time, I experienced as a pastor's kid, especially, a lot of loss and trauma and drama and anger,
mhm,
and so much of that experience I feel like has made me, the reverent person that I am today,
mhm,
the spiritual person that I am today. Do I
mhm,
think of myself to be religious? No, but I spend a lot of time considering gratitude and reverence and gratefulness, which
mhm.
I think were so ingrained in us during those times, in a overly aggressive way, but
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it. I
Mhm.
probably would have never met you.
No, yeah. No, like without the
No.
truth.
Yeah, and then it's just like it's a simple and beautiful thing, I think, that just gets taken and twisted and
Mhm,
convoluted and, for the lack of a better word, tainted. And that's where these things become, problematic. That's where, the pettiness and the drama and, the conspiracy theorists of the church start coming out and like blowing shit up.
causing the drama. Well, yes, because we were a part of a great deal of drama. And that's like that's the reality of like the world, though. Like now more than ever. Like I remember, I don't know if you remember this sermon. Do you remember when gay marriage was legalized?
Oh,
Do
I
you-
sure do.
I remember the sermon. It was like a 3-hour sermon in prayer for the country of and the world of this path we're going to. And so it's funny to see because like in a lot of ways, the pandemic has brought about. I hope that you're actually there. Okay, what I was saying was
Yes.
was like So we growing up in the church, we knew that the church was super against like gay marriage and all of that. But and
Tattoos.
so there's and tattoo. Oh my God, yeah. When I got my first like Bible verse tattoo, literally of a Bible verse, like it was like I had to hide it. Remember? Yeah,
Literally, I got a Jesus fish as my first tattoo, and they're like, ah.
yeah. Because in Leviticus, and that's I was like, that's probably the first time I think I remember really starting to understand like complexity and like context because Leviticus, it was talking about at the time, everybody was running up and down the streets like, I'm praying to a cow now. I'm getting a tattoo of a cow. And we're worshiping the cow. Like everyone, kind of like now in the world, like everyone was in a state of chaos and they didn't know where to go. So then the Bible was like, well, this is don't get false markings of false gods. That's what the Bible verse was about. But then
Totally.
bring in Caribbean parents and it's like, actually, that's no tattoos, and you better never get a tattoo ever.
But this is what a book said here, right here. It says no tattoos.
And you read it, it's
You
like, actually, it says there's like no tattoos and no are in the same sentence. Therefore, no tattoos.
Do you know what baffles me about that? And like, I'm not gonna get into any details of the Bible, but in a very generic sense,
Yeah.
the New Testament, the Old Testament was, set the way that it was set up with all of those sacrifices and
Mhm.
religious rituals and stuff because faith wasn't yet established.
Mm, mm,
And then in the New Testament, even the reason why there was a New Testament, it was because God already had his people. He already had followers, believers, people who had faith.
mhm.
That's why the stuff in the Old Testament didn't really lose like not validity, like it's still important to, build your altar and do your own shit, but like also we evolved from there.
Yeah,
Hence the New Testament.
yeah,
So when people hold on so specifically to just like that's a generic statement about the Bible.
yeah,
Maybe it's incorrect. I don't know, Sumi, but that's as far as I know, like that's correct.
yeah,
But some people will pick and choose specific things out of specific spots of the Bible and be like, no, you're wrong. This is what it's about. When
yeah,
we're all reading from the same book.
yeah. Well,
And
and
I think that's where my mind kind of like, that's where church began to not sit with me well, where it's
mhm,
like, it's one book, one person, one being, one spirit that we're worshiping. Yet we all can't do it together because we're picking and choosing what makes sense and what resides with us.
mhm.
And then calling out someone for it being wrong because they don't have the same mentality as you. That's what gets me being like,
What?
make it make sense.
Make it make sense.
Make that make sense to me.
But and that's because when you look at like Hebrew and Greek, the earliest transcripts of the Bible, again, this topic is theology now, but like when you look at those old contexts, like English is not as in depth. It doesn't have the depth that Greek and Hebrew have because it's not been around as long. So how can you tell me that your literal English translation of something that's also been translated multiple times in English is now to be taken so literally? And so that was like, I think my biggest takeaway from like those church days, because for me I actually still tell people like I love some of the principles and like the character of Jesus I actually respect because he never he never answered you with like, okay, it's like what's one plus one is equals two. He's like, no, someone's like, what's one plus one? He's like, well, it depends on what the one is. And he always
Yeah.
spoke in parables
What's your
and it's like,
perspective?
yeah, and it was like he was almost like teaching. It felt like he was always teaching you how to think for yourself and follow these values. And so there's really beautiful parts, I will admit. And I think that when we think of the church, like it can be a really beautiful, healthy community. But what's happened in like how it's been uh, brought into like politics and then like to use to be controlled. And then you I mean look at the church. There's like you've got Christians, but no, it's not just Christians. There's Christians and there's Catholics. And then under Christianity, there's like agnostic. There's I was gonna say acoustic, alliance. There's so many because they just don't agree, and they're like so caught in their ego of it that I'm like, gosh, you just missed the mark of like, just live, be loved.
Totally. Oh
That's
my
amazing.
God. And RJ, that's what like brings me back to this existential dread.
Yeah.
You grow up, you go to school, you're taught a certain, set of mannerisms. Then you grow up and like you're in church and like, you feel that tinge in your heart to be a good, kind, loving human being, you know, just like kindness and compassion is lost
Hmm.
in this day and age. And I'm just not someone who's hard hearted enough to be like okay with it. So every damn day, I'm like, what happened? What's happening to this world? And
Yeah.
why can't we get back to the basics? And
Yeah.
it's ego.
Hmm. And ego out of check, because
Oh,
I will make a case for ego and spirit existing in balance. That like, but that's like this conscious awareness of how that's, I always talk about being responsible for your individual healing and your collective healing. Like when
mm,
I think in the context of conflict and relationship, it's like recognizing that like fights and shit will go down and that's healthy and that's a part of it. But then it's coming back and saying, you know what? This thing you said triggered this memory for me, and that's my work.
mhm,
But moving forward, I need you to do this for me, and that's our work. Like it's like
right.
both, and both are in balance. And the thing, like, it's just because we were so influenced by so many things, we missed, I don't know, the opportunity to teach ourselves how to emotionally regulate, how to have healthy relationships, how
Yeah,
to balance ourselves, and how like that's the missing piece. Like I understand that schools were made to get kids ready for the labor force and it like, but I think the opportunity, if we're going to live in the system as it is, to like build curriculums that empower young people and tell truths and allow folk, like it can change the whole thing, because like
totally.
our generation is just like we're peeling the band-aid off, and then in a lot of ways like other older generations will like critique us, and I'm like, critique us, but like you just led such a blind eye to all of this and like
Yeah.
lived blindly, and we're like, wait a minute, we can do better, we can do
We
better.
can do so much better. And it almost feels like you're the foreign, what is it when you have like foreign object, when you have foreign object in your eye. It's like
Yeah.
you're the foreign object because you're trying to think of a better space and time, like outside of the box.
Hmm.
And that just like that perplexes me so much. When you want more when you want more out of life,
Hmm.
when you want more interaction, like healthier relationships and better communication, it's almost like, well, why?
Yeah.
When we just need to exist and be happy. That's the why.
Yeah. Just being present, and I think like technology has done this beautiful thing where it brought people together who thought they were isolated in the thoughts that you and I are sharing right now.
I
That's like,
absolutely agree.
it's brought people together, and I think then it gives us the responsibility to say, okay, now we need to be accountable to how this continues.
Totally.
What
That makes so much
is
sense.
what is the balance? How do we evolve alongside technology and with each other in a good way? But I think where we're at now, like, I don't want to say I'm in my pessimist era, but I am in the sense that like there's so many people who are just so traumatized and fearful
Broken.
and scared and broken from the
Yeah.
pandemic, and it brought everything to life. And I think one of the easiest, I will argue, emotions to feel isn't happiness, but it's anger.
Hmm.
And it's in our DNA, it's in our ancestries, it's in our makeup. It's thousands of years before. It's how the world has gotten to where we're experiencing now. Was
Right.
about violence, was about anger, was about ego. And so when those powers are at play, like it makes the journey, I think, that much harder for you or I or anyone who's like, wait a minute, what?
Wait a minute.
So then now the question is, how would you say that you like recognizing that there's all this existential dread and there's all this complexity? It sounds dark, but I mean it in an honest way. Like, what keeps you here? What keeps you alive? Knowing all of this is there.
Oh my God, that's a really good question. Because in just like awareness of the existential dread in and of itself, there's also the side where it's like, but I also don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about it other than exist in it and, kind of just like follow that muscle memory.
Mhm,
So it's like I'm looking for answers that, I don't even know where to start to find.
mhm,
Um, but I'm just someone who is able to see beauty and bliss in such simplistic things
mhm,
that like those pockets of happiness and joy that I have, when I'm in the middle of nowhere,
mhm,
completely unplugged and like a tree is just swaying in the wind in a way that's just so captivatingly beautiful
mhm,
that I'm like, there is more.
mhm,
And at one point, I think we're going to get back to it because what we're in right now it isn't working. It isn't working for anybody who isn't Jeffrey Bezos.
yeah, yeah.
um so yeah, like there's more and there's love, there's friendship, there's fellowship. Like communication has become one of my favorite things lately whereas in my younger days I wouldn't even you couldn't pay me to tell you how I really felt because I was scared.
Yeah.
Whereas I have some friendships now, like with Kamaria, where our communication is so unbelievably crystal clear that it's
Yeah.
like, how were we ever mad at each other before? Why did we ever feel like we couldn't talk to each other about everything?
Aw.
And like those special moments of like growth and, healing of past trauma and becoming who we are today and, thriving on the experience that I've had in the past.
Mhm.
This is why I still want to be here. Like there's still more to it. I just don't really like it right now.
And I'm gonna be so cheesy. It's that song. I should play it as the outro to this episode.
Please don't. That's going to be the cheesiest
Do
things in
you
the
know what
world.
song it is? It's
No.
Faith Evans, Twister. Cause I'm hopeful. Yes, I am hopeful for today. Take this music. But I remember being in this place that I feel actually like right now as I'm having this conversation with you, and I just appreciate how we're closing this out because I was in this space like a year and a half ago, and that song came on and it was fucking cheesy, but it brought me back to that childhood, that time where things were simpler. And again, back to this idea of time, that we can experience this past time that existed because it doesn't see time. That memory, that feeling, that sensation lives here in my body.
So true. It
And
doesn't expire.
and music, there's that song that I always sing to you every so often, like, girl, you know what he did? India
You know what he did.
or Kirk Franklin, Book of Revelation. Like I go back to gospel more often than not because like it brings me back to a time. And so we think like these things are so in the past, but I'd argue that they're a part of us and we exist in the present, but at the same way, the future, this hope, this thing is also within us. And it's going to
Totally.
be. And I think that's like past, present, future is like the gift of being a human species, is like that level of consciousness. Like, not, I don't think any other species get that gift.
I guess that's why we reign supreme. Like sometimes I'm driving in traffic and I'm like, I don't know why we're the superior species.
Right?
But now that you talk about being able to hold on to so much in our in our minds,
Yeah.
that's probably why.
Right. What a life.
And
Or
that honestly,
life.
that's a gift. Unfortunately, I just feel like some people will like look at the past and look at the present, and maybe they don't develop themselves in a way that's, positive to the people around them or gives back to the people around them. It's more so, unchecked ego where it's like, all right.
And and unhealed trauma, the deeper I go into mediation and conflict is like, oh my God, you were just trying to get your unresolved trauma needs met by
It's
doing
true.
this harmful act, right? Like that's why I don't, going into like law next is like, it's really about those indigenous principles around like, okay, two people were involved in this. What do they need to move forward in a good way? Those are the systems I want to be a part of. And does it take time? Yes, but time is a construct. It's an idea used to push profit. So I look forward to getting back to humanity. And I don't know that I'll see it in our lifetime. I would love to.
We would we love to see that? We
If you
would
say
love to
big
see that.
thing, I'm here, let's do it. But I recognize and I'm humility, my humility is realized when I say, but that might not happen. But especially, I mean, now that my sperm has brought new life into the world, my
So cute.
DNA, the energy of that, I hope will continue to be past my physical body. And bitch, I'm gonna come back as a fucking like, I don't even know what. I'm not coming back as a plant. Like I'm coming back as like something wild. My energy
Yeah,
will live through a new living thing.
totally. I don't know what I'm gonna. I mean, I'll probably come back as some kind of like beautiful tree, but hopefully
You
I come back. Hopefully I come back as like a reincarnated somebody, that becomes like super famous or something, and I can be like, this is my second life.
Good guys, this is my second life. I already saw what we fucked up last time. Let's quick fix. Let's go.
Let's just do it.
Let's go. Let's fix it. Because again, fame. Like, there's this like chasing for fame, and it's like the saddest thing. We were doing a workshop with in Quebec. It's called the SPVM. Maybe it's in Montreal. Anyway, it's the police. And they were talking about how young girls in their chase to fame want to go be in like rappers' music videos. And then they get into introduced them to drugs, alcohol, and then sex trafficking. And then they're stuck in this vicious cycle. And so I say that because this idea for fame is wild to me. And I mean, I
Mm,
can't say that I didn't want it, but when I think of or still love having influence, but the reason for fame, at least for me, is about the ability to impact many. That's what it's really.
totally.
It's nothing to do with me. I don't give a shit. I mean, it's really about the impact.
The thing that's gotten really old to me about fame is how rarely fame is used to like spread authenticity. Like it's not. I don't see fame as something that's like a positive influence, really.
Mhm.
Like, sure, I love music. I've got so many favorite artists that I would pass out if they were standing in this living room right now. I'd be like, oh my God, I love you. But like, I find myself so frequently looking further into some of my favorite artists and finding out that they're terrible people.
Mhm.
And I just feel like when you have that many eyes on you, when you have an opportunity to influence people,
Yeah.
so rarely does anyone take that as an opportunity to actually be like a positive force in
Mhm.
this world.
Well, and then because of there's this new show called The Idols. I've only watched episode one, but it's a cool show, kind of on the Euphoria vibes. I think the same producer, but
Ooh,
a young pop star. I think she comes out of rehab or like a mental health lapse, and it's her journey. But in the first episode, for about like 25 minutes, an incident happens, and she's continuing to work while like 10 different people are like, well, we need to handle it this way, and I need to handle it this way, and this, and all of these powers at play guiding this one individual's life. So sometimes we paint a picture of like celebrities publicly, and it's like, oh, they're a bitch. But I'm like, or they just have boundaries and they don't want, like to be that accessible to human beings who are like,
terrifying.
it's the scariest thing. I can't even imagine. And then when we have positive influences like Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, like I think that family is quite healthy in a lot of ways and was quite moving towards that. And then what did the industry do? They then took honestly, people get slapped in the face all the goddamn time in real life. Listen.
Honestly, you said Will Smith and Jada, and I like heard the slap in my ear.
You heard the slap. And
That's all I can think about.
He lost contracts, and I'd argue like he's still building his public rapport, but that's like because people have this like they idolize people and like, oh, they have to be perfect. It's like, no, they need to be human. And that was the most human thing Will could have done. And for me in that moment, I respected him even more because I was like, oh my God, you're just a human being like us.
That's fair. I honestly never thought of it that way. So that probably makes me want to laugh a little bit less every time everyone mentions it, because it's true. That was just pure emotional impulse.
Mm-hmm.
That's human. That's a human reaction.
Yeah. And that's the more I see that level of authenticity, like that's what I want to see. But we saw how the community, how people responded to him, and that's like, again, that's the scary thing with fame, is like you become the victim of, not the victim, the property of the public. And
it's true.
All I want to do is have big conversations and dance on big stages, you know. All actors and people want to do is do their work, but yet when they do it in this world, we do it in this world, it's like it's just that much worse. It's just that
true. Yeah.
She's just meowing at the storm.
She's my little kitty baby.
Well, I think that is a beautiful place to close this finale.
It's true.
Of the
Okay, you're yelling, so goodbye.
No, I think it's a good place. Like I think we've touched on a lot of things, and the kind of the messiness of unpacking and healing, and I hope that everyone who's listening takes a little gem of wisdom that helps them on their journey, and if not, well, it's over. That's the end.
Too bad. Totally. It really quickly, just to add, like, even like partway through it, I was like, oh my God, Amanda, you went off on tangents that didn't even make any sense. Like, I hope he's gonna edit that out. But this podcast is called The Beautiful Mess, and like, honestly, so is that what it's called?
The glorious mess.
The glorious mess. And honestly, that crazy loop of thought where, you know, I just have the greater good for me and, you know, my people and this nation in mind. It sounds super like pageanty, but you know, it is a glorious mess every day.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned, there's like the highs are blissful and the lows are uncomfortable, but it's all experience at the end of the day, and like it just matters what you do with your time. And I value conversation like this more than anything in this day and age. So
100%. And if anything, this conversation inspires anyone listening, is like, have these conversations with your friends. And if your friends don't have this depth of conversation, find new friends.
Find people to expand with. And I don't mean sexually.
Maybe, you know, to each their own. Like you can learn that. But yeah, expand yourself. Like that's these are the things that are within our control. So if there isn't a lot in our control, let's at least take control of what we can.
Totally.
All the best on your journeys. Thank you, Amanda, for joining me. I love you lots.
No, it's a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thanks for asking me.
Of course. And everyone.
I love you as well.
We'll see everyone in season 2. That's French for 2.
God.